They didn't find him alive. They found him arranged. Face up in black water, eyes open, body untouched except for one thing. Around his neck was the same rope he used on the slaves, and carved into his chest a symbol none of the white men understood. But some of the oldest Africans did. They just refused to say what it meant. Because that was the night the plantation realized something terrifying. They weren't the ones in control anymore. Something else had started hunting back. Long before that night, Montclair Estate ran like a machine. A vast sugar plantation carved into the wet lowlands of Saint-Domingue, where the air never dried, the soil never cooled, and the ground itself seemed to breathe under the weight of heat. From the edge of the cane fields, you could hear it, the scrape of blades slicing through stalks, the grinding roar of the mill crushing cane into pulp, and somewhere in between, the crack of a whip, followed by silence. Because on Montclair, silence wasn't natural, it was enforced. Before sunrise, the conch shell would sound, a long hollow note cutting through the dark, and from the huts, bodies would rise, not waking, responding. Men and women forced into lines, counted, inspected, divided, like livestock. And among them, moved a man most people didn't notice, Kofi. He kept his head low, his movements slow, controlled. Never the fastest, never the weakest, never memorable. That was how he survived. Because on a plantation like Montclair, being seen too clearly was dangerous. Kofi had been there long enough to understand the system. Not the one written in ledgers, the real one. The one that lived in routines, in fear, in the habits of men who believed themselves untouchable. At the center of that system were the overseers. Men who rode through the cane fields on horseback, pistols at their sides, whips looped casually in their hands. Men who didn't just enforce rules, they embodied them. And among them, one stood above the rest. Etienne Vargo. Broad-shouldered, hard-eyed, a former soldier who never left the battlefield, he just changed targets. Where other men drank, he punished. Where other men shouted, he smiled. Because for Vargo, pain wasn't a tool. It was entertainment. He liked to choose one person each morning. Never the strongest, never the loudest, the weakest. Someone already struggling, already close to breaking. And then, he would make them an example. Public, slow, unavoidable, so everyone else would learn. Or remember. That morning, the air was thick even before sunrise, heavy, wet. The kind of heat that clings to your skin before the day even begins. Kofi worked near the eastern ditch. Blade rising and falling, measured. Quiet. He didn't look up when Vargo approached. He didn't need to. You could feel him, the way animals feel a predator. Hoofbeats slowed. Stopped. Somewhere nearby, a man coughed. Weak, wet. That was all it took. Vargo dismounted, no words. The strike came fast. Leather cracking across bone, the old man dropped instantly. Face into the mud, didn't try to get up. Vargo stepped on his back, pressed down, hard. Keep cutting. No one stopped, no one spoke. Because stopping meant joining him. A woman nearby, young, didn't move fast enough, her blade slipped from her hand. That sound, barely louder than a breath, was enough. Vargo turned, and in seconds, she was dragged through the cane. Screaming, struggling. Until the sound stopped. By midday, she would be tied to the punishment frame. Displayed, as a warning. This wasn't chaos, it was design. Every act, measured. Every punishment, chosen. Not just to hurt, but to erase, names, memory, identity. To turn people into something easier to control.
And for years, it worked. Montclair ran clean. Efficient, profitable. But beneath it, something else was growing. Something the overseers couldn't see. Or refused to. Small things at first, tools moved, but not stolen, placed, tracks in the mud, that stopped, where no man could disappear. Dogs, refusing to enter certain parts of the field after dusk. Whining. Backing away, afraid. And one place, on the western edge of the estate, near the old drying sheds, where even the boldest overseers stopped going after dark. Because sometimes, if you stood close enough, you could hear it. A sound beneath the ground, not loud, not clear, but there. Something, moving, waiting. And on Montclair, the men who ruled through fear, had begun to feel it watching them back.
At first, the overseers laughed it off. They called it superstition, stories, slave talk. Because men like them needed the world to stay simple. Master above, labor below. Everything else didn't exist. But Montclair had started to change, and even men like Vargo could feel it. It began with the dogs, hunting dogs, trained to track scent through swamp and cane, animals that didn't hesitate, didn't doubt, until they did. One evening, just before sunset, a handler tried to lead them toward the western edge, same path they'd taken 100 times before. The dogs stopped. Not slowed, stopped, ears back, bodies low, refusing to move. The handler pulled harder, swore, struck one across the flank. The dog turned and bit him. Not wild, not rabid, afraid. After that, no one pushed them that way again. Then came the tools. A cane blade left in the field, found the next morning. Clean. Not just cleaned. Arranged. Laid flat across a stump, edge facing outward. Like it had been placed there, for someone to see. Another day, a coil of rope disappeared from the mill. By evening, it was found again, hanging from a low branch near the swamp. Tied in a loop, not a knot used for work, a knot used for hanging. The overseers didn't speak about it openly, but they started carrying their pistols more often, checking the chambers twice, looking over their shoulders, even in daylight. And Vargo, the man who feared nothing, began watching the western fields, not casually, carefully. Kofi noticed. Of course he did, because Vargo's eyes kept returning to the same place. The swamp line, where the ground dipped, and the cane grew too thick to cross easily. At first, Kofi thought it meant nothing, until the whispers started. Low voices passed between workers, never spoken near white ears. Stories of years before, of people taken away at night, not punished, not displayed, removed, buried somewhere beyond the fields, not recorded, not remembered, erased. Kofi didn't believe everything he heard, but he listened, because on Montclair, truth didn't live in one place. It lived in fragments, and when enough fragments came together, you started to see the shape of something buried. That evening, the sky turned early. Storm clouds rolling in from the coast. Heavy, low, the kind of sky that presses down on the land. Feel closer. Vargo didn't wait for orders. Didn't ask permission. Just before sunset, he saddled his horse, took a lantern, a pistol, and 2 of the hunting dogs. At the gate, one of the guards asked where he was going. Vargo didn't answer right away, just looked past him, toward the western fields. Then finally, checking something. That was all he said. The dogs resisted at first, pulling back, whining low in their throats. But Vargo forced them forward, boot in the stirrup, hand tight on the leash. He rode out alone, toward the one place no one else wanted to go after dark. The storm broke just after nightfall. Rain, heavy, relentless, flattening the cane, turning the paths into black rivers of mud. From the huts, people lay awake, listening to the rain, to the mill, to the wind moving through the fields. And then, something else. The dogs. Not barking like hunters, not chasing, screaming, wild, broken, terrified. The sound carried across the estate, cut through the storm, then stopped, all at once. Silence. No one went out, no one checked, because everyone knew, some things you don't go looking for in the dark. By morning, Vargo hadn't returned, and for the first time, the plantation felt it. Not rumor, not unease, fear, real, and getting closer. They waited until morning. Not because they weren't worried, but because no one wanted to be the first to go looking. When the rain finally broke, the estate moved slower, quieter. Even the overseers spoke in lower voices. Because one thing was already clear. Vargo was late, and men like him were never late. The search party went out after sunrise. Rifles, torches, dogs they had to drag behind them. They spread through the cane in a wide line, moving toward the western swamp. Kofi kept working, blade rising, falling, but his eyes followed them. Everyone's did, because no one needed to hear what they would find. They already knew it wouldn't be normal. It took less than an hour. The line stopped, all at once. One man dropped his torch. Another crossed himself. Then someone shouted. Not an order, a reaction. By the time they dragged the body back, the entire yard had gone still. No movement, no voices, just watching. Vargo lay on his back, soaked, covered in black water and mud. His face, unchanged. No struggle, no panic, just still. His pistol was still in his belt, unfired. No broken bones, no torn flesh, nothing. That explained how a man like him ended up dead, except for one thing. Around his neck was a braided cord, pulled tight, too tight, the same cord he used on the slaves. Some of the overseers stepped back, not from the body, from the meaning, because this wasn't random. This wasn't an accident. This was a message. Then someone noticed his chest. At first, they thought it was mud. Then the light shifted, and they saw it, carved into the skin, slow, deliberate, a symbol, not letters, not words, something older, something intentional. The white men didn't understand it. They argued over it, dismissed it, called it nonsense. But behind them, among the enslaved, something changed. Kofi saw it first. Not the symbol, the faces, the oldest ones, men who had survived too long, women who remembered too much. Their eyes didn't widen, they didn't gasp, they went still, recognizing, and then, just as quickly, they looked away. Like seeing it was dangerous. That was when Kofi understood. This wasn't new. It just hadn't been seen in a long time. The plantation owner arrived late. Henri Duval, cold, controlled, a man who believed everything had an explanation, and that explanation belonged to him. He looked at the body, at the cord, at the symbol, and for a moment, just a moment, something cracked. Then it was gone. Find who did this. His voice was sharp, flat, now. But there was a problem. No tracks, no signs of struggle, no trail leading away. It was as if whatever killed Vargo had simply appeared and then disappeared again. The overseers started talking over each other, blaming the workers, blaming the storm, blaming anything that made sense. But none of it did, because deep down, they all felt it. This wasn't the beginning of something. It was the return of something they were never supposed to remember. That afternoon, punishments doubled, not because they had answers, but because they didn't. Men were dragged out, beaten, questioned. No one spoke. No one could, because the truth was moving somewhere else entirely. And as the sun started to fall again, Montclair felt different. Not weaker, not broken, changed. Because for the first time, fear wasn't flowing in just one direction. And somewhere beyond the cane, beyond the swamp, something that had been buried was no longer staying buried. By the second night, Montclair was no longer the same place. The mill still turned, the cane was still cut, but the rhythm was off. Too quiet in the wrong places, too loud in others. The overseers changed first. Men who once walked alone now moved in pairs. Pistols checked twice, doors locked earlier, rum bottles emptied faster, and laughter, when it came, never lasted long. Because every shadow felt closer now. Every sound carried a question. Who was next? Henri Duval didn't allow fear, not openly, so he answered it, the only way he knew how. With control. More patrols, more searches, more punishment. Men dragged from the fields at random, beaten until they named someone, anyone. Women's huts turned over, food stores destroyed. Children counted, twice. As if fear could be measured, as if terror could be solved through numbers. But it only made things worse. Because the enslaved felt it too, the shift. And when fear changes direction, it brings something with it. Clarity. They started noticing things they had trained themselves to ignore. Which guard stayed near the yard, which one avoided the western path. Which doors opened at night, which ones stayed locked. And Kofi noticed more than anyone, because he had always watched, always listened. Now he started connecting. The tools, the rope, the symbol. And one more thing, Duval himself. Twice, after sunset, Kofi saw him ride out. Not with the others, not with guards, alone. Toward the western fields, the same place Vargo had gone. The same place no one spoke about. That was enough. Kofi didn't follow, not yet. Because on Montclair, moving too fast gets you seen. Instead, he did what men like him had always done. He built truth in pieces. That Sunday, when the work slowed, he sat near an old cooper named Cambon. One eye gone, voice low. A man who had survived longer than most. They didn't speak at first. Because truth is dangerous when rushed. But eventually, Cambon leaned closer, not looking at him, and said one thing. They buried people out there. Kofi didn't answer. Cambon continued. Years ago, before Duval, before Vargo, a group brought in from inland. Men who fought, women who refused. Not broken, not controllable. There was supposed to be a public punishment. An example. But something changed. Orders came down, different. No spectacle, no witnesses, no record. They were taken west, at night, toward the sheds, toward the swamp. And after that, nothing. The ground was changed, ditches rerouted, buildings closed, declared unsafe. Cambon finally looked at him. They didn't hang them. They buried them. Alive. Silence stretched between them. Because some truths don't need repeating. That night, Kofi didn't sleep. He lay still, eyes open, listening to the plantation breathe. Because now, everything made sense. The symbol, the patterns, the fear. This wasn't madness. It was memory. Something, or someone, was bringing it back. And if that was true, then Vargo wasn't the end. He was the beginning. Because buried things don't stay buried unless something keeps them there. And on Montclair, something had just been set loose.
The second overseer disappeared 4 nights later. No storm this time. No warning. Just gone. His name was Lucien Morel. Quieter than Vargo, more careful, more dangerous. Because Vargo used pain to control. Morel used planning, records, punishments done out of sight, people who vanished without anyone asking why. And after Vargo died, Morel changed. He still punished, still barked orders. But his eyes never stopped moving. He stopped walking alone, stopped sleeping through the night, kept a pistol under his pillow, checked the door twice, 3 times. But fear doesn't leave men like that. It settles, waits, and then it pushes them to prove they're not afraid. That evening, just before sunset, Morel made a mistake. "I'll go myself." That's what he said. To the others, to Duval. "I'll find whatever's out there." They laughed. Too loudly. Encouraged him. Poured him rum. Because courage is easier to demand from someone else. Kofi heard it all. From the shadows near the tool rack. And something in him tightened. Not fear for Morel. Understanding. Because the plantation had just stepped into something already waiting. That night, Morel rode out alone. Lantern, pistol, blade at his side. Toward the western sheds. The cane moved around him, whispering. The wind low. And then, nothing. No shout. No shot. No sound at all. By morning, he hadn't returned. This time, they searched immediately. Faster, harder. As if speed could change the outcome. They found the horse first. Reins dragging. Flanks cut shallow, not deep enough to kill. Just enough to make it run. Then, the lantern. Smashed, deliberately. Oil soaked into the roots of a kapok tree. Extinguished, like a message. And hanging above it, a key. Small, iron. Turning slowly in the wind. The key to the punishment room. The place where Morel kept others, standing through the night. Breaking them slowly. Some of the men refused to go further. But they were ordered on. Toward the shed, the abandoned one. The door had already been forced open. But not wide. Just enough. Like it had been open once, and then left. Inside, it was dark. Hot. Still. The air, thick. Wrong. Then someone raised a torch. And they saw him. Morel stood upright, feet barely touching the ground, wrists chained above his head, to one of the old beams. His boots, gone. His mouth, stuffed with cane fiber. So he couldn't scream. Around his neck, an iron collar, locked tight. The same kind he used on others.
The room went silent, because this wasn't killing. This was judgment. On the floor beneath him, someone had arranged things. Broken cane slips, torn scraps of ledger paper, formed into a circle. Dark with blood. As if the plantation itself was being rewritten. And carved into the beam beside his head, the same symbol. Only deeper, more certain. Duval lost control when he saw it, shouting, demanding names, dragging men out at random, whipping them until two collapsed. Because pain was the only answer he understood. But it didn't help, because now everyone knew. This wasn't random. This wasn't revenge. This was a system. Someone, or something, knew the plantation, knew its records, its punishments, its secrets, and was using them against the men who built it. That night, Montclair didn't sleep, doors barred, lanterns burning, pistols loaded. And in the huts, the enslaved lay still, not speaking, because something had changed. The fear they lived with, every day, had found a new direction. And Kofi finally understood his place in it. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was history, coming back. And somewhere beneath the western sheds lay the truth. Not rumor, not story, proof of what had been buried, and why it was rising now. So when the moon climbed high, and the estate held its breath, Kofi made a choice, not because he wasn't afraid, but because he was. He slipped from the huts, moved low through the cane, toward the western edge, toward the place no one was meant to see, because whatever was hunting the overseers wasn't the real secret. The real secret was what they had buried. And once something like that wakes up, it doesn't stop. Until it's finished.